Hello, welcome to another Inside the Birds TV episode. This is going to be an Ask ITB as we continue to address and answer to the best we can all of your Ask ITB questions. I'm Geoff Mosher with Adam Caplan. Ask ITB or ITB TV is, of course, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the top-rated sportsbook app. And a lot of people got good questions, Adam, and I know you've got them lined up. So we will do the best we can here and get to them. Again, if you want to leave us a question, many ways to do it. You can email us at insidethebirds@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Geoff Mosher NFL. He's at Caplan NFL. We have a Twitter account for our Inside the Birds. It's at Inside Birds. Just use the hashtag AskITB. You can also leave a question through our website, insidethebirds.com. Scroll down, find the Ask ITB bar, and then on our Facebook community group. You can do that through Facebook as well, the Inside the Birds Facebook community group. Oh, and one last way, we'll get to one today, is if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Reviews and ask us a question in the review, I promise you will get an answer for a 5-star review. With that, take it away, Mr. Caplan.
All right, from Miguel, Ask ITB. Hey, guys, just want to start off by saying great job as always. Thank you. A quick question. Do you guys think Quez Watkins is more upside than Zach Pascal? Adam mentioned Zach was more of a possession receiver. Yes, and yes. He has way more upside. He's more explosive. Pascal could line up inside or outside, but he's a possession receiver. As we were saying on the show that dropped Thursday morning, if you've got him as your third or fourth receiver, where he doesn't have to play like he did last year, he'll do fine in that possession role. He's being paid like that. He's being paid like a third or fourth receiver. Well, on Thursday's show, we put out the terms, the entire breakdown. But Watkins was a great story. One thing that people had asked us. Actually, we got this question like a month ago. I can't remember if we answered it, but I'll answer it now. In part, so there was a question about who. It was really a great question. I can't remember who asked it. So if the guy's listening, I apologize for not answering it before, but maybe it was because we were on other stuff. But the question is about, do they have coaches who could develop players or they're younger players who are developing? And, we've talked about Watkins from time to time, but he's one, Geoff, I think you'd admit it. You'd agree with me. He's a guy that has developed. Remember, he was a 6th-round pick, right? I mean, this guy has been one of the draftees. Now, quite frankly, this time last year, I was nonplussed because he had been disappointing, needed to mature a little bit, and it hadn't happened. And then you saw training camp, he really came on.
Yeah, I mean, you think about his first year. I mean, he was basically a guy who was bottom of the roster, did not even see the field until later in the year. Then he had about 2 or 3 plays, including that screen against Arizona that he took for a touchdown, that showed you that he's got speed. And sort of, remember, for a couple of years there, the Eagles had no speed at wide receiver. So that was kind of a welcome addition to see. Now, last year, he came along. He seemed like a shot play guy at the start of the year. And I still think at the moment he's best right now has been a shot play guy. But I thought we saw as the season went along some contested catchability on the intermediary routes, the ability to go up and get the ball in traffic or if it's not accurately thrown. And the fact that he had 647 receiving yards after just having 100 in his first year, I mean, that's a pretty big leap there from 106 to 647, shows you that he was able to kind of really take a big step from year 1 to year 2. Now, does that, so that means he has more upside than Zach Pascal, who's never had 647 yards in a season. He's had 600 yards a couple of times, but never as much as Watkins, and he's older than Watkins. So what that shows you is the potential is there. Now, the one thing we've talked about with Quez is, the focus, the concentration, knowing your role, responsibility, running your route correctly so that it doesn't lead to an interception, which we saw a couple of times with him either stopping in his route. So he has a lot of work to do to really round into that quote unquote, best number 2 option that Nick Sirianni has ever coached. He's got some work to do there, but clearly he has the abilities, the physical abilities to be able to do that, to be a really good receiver in the league.
Yeah, I see. It's funny because Sirianni said what he said about Watkins could be the best number 2 he's worked with. Well, he could say all he wants about that, but why did they go after Calvin Ridley? Why were they, as we detailed pretty well, why were they involved trying to sign Allen Robinson?
Right.
Because if Allen Robinson came in here, although he's not, we could all debate whether he's the same player he once was, Watkins wouldn't be starting. So, and that means he's not a number 2 because obviously DeVante Smith is the other starter. So it just tells us, as we've talked about the last couple of shows, they clearly are looking to make a splash still at wide receiver.
Right.
How they do that, whether it's a trade, whether it's, well, I won't be in free agency in terms of who's available on the street because there's just not that guy left. Whether it's the draft in the first round, they're going to do something. At least they're going to try very hard. You control the effort, whether the guy wants to, if you're trading for him, the other team has to say yes. Or if you're in the draft, you got to evaluate it right. And we know that their history of evaluating receivers, last whatever series of years has been very shoddy at best.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got to get better at it. And the key is, we said this prior to last year's draft, and I'll just repeat it. This is going to be the mantra for this particular football team. If the general manager stays by the draft board, because these guys do a great job of setting. It's the guys making the picks.
Mm-hmm.
Last year. The funny one, the one where he apparently didn't go by the complete draft board, was on Milton Williams. And looks like from year one, at least he's got a chance to get that right because Milton Williams is a very big surprise.
Yeah. So thought we saw some promise from Milton Williams. So we'll see what happens with his career. All right. What's the next question?
From Jeff Greenbaum. This is an interesting one. Everyone is talking about how good Deshaun Watson is, but how many elite quarterbacks after the rookie seasons have had 4 wins where they were not injured? Brady, no. Breeze, no. Peyton, no. Russell, no. Ben, no. Mahomes, no. Lamar, no. He has also sat out a year. Matthew Stafford, yes. Major red flags about ability to make teammates better. What year off will do, as well as personal issues. Perhaps people are using the term elite too loosely to describe him. He looks like a good QB who really also needs people around him to make around him, like Stafford was able to drag the team by himself. Even Luck did with Indy. Yeah. So, Jeff, I get the point. Now, I know this. Greg Cosell said Watson was awesome in 2020, like phenomenal. The talent around him was bad. The defense was not competitive. It was probably the most non-competitive defense in the league in 2020. Mm-hmm. So, if a guy puts up numbers and the tape shows that he's playing great, then that's what he looks like. He can't control who's around him. I get your point about Stafford. Did he really elevate? The thing with Stafford was, like, he'd play well and then he'd make a bonehead play, try to force the issue. If you saw him down the stretch, those interceptions that he had late in the regular season last season, you go, man, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Watson wasn't doing that. He played well, but they didn't have a lot of talent around him, and Bill O'Brien gutted the team, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand Jeff's point. He says how many quarterbacks who have not been hurt in a year, how many elite quarterbacks who have not had an injury have won just 4 games, which was his record, Deshaun Watson and the Texans' record 2 years ago. They were 4-12. But I would also say every once in a while an anomaly comes along that's hard to explain. I would throw back at Jeff how many quarterbacks on a 4-12 team are top 5 in passer rating, which I believe he was that year, and put up the statistics that he put up. So that's an anomaly. I mean, I think in general, you just tend to go with what your eyes and go with what people tell you. Deshaun Watson played well that year. His team just lost a lot of games because he was on a really bad team, and not just a bad team, but sort of bad from the foundation all the way up. I mean, everything about the culture of the franchise was in question. And to be honest, I think you can look at that situation and praise Deshaun Watson as a player, saying despite everything going around him, he played fairly well. They just didn't win a lot of games, but he wasn't the one that was costing the games. It's not like he had a ton of interceptions or a ton of fumbles. He played well. The numbers show you that he played well. So I can understand not wanting to put him elite top 3 or 4, although, there's at this point, when you're looking at the best quarterbacks in the league, you're looking at Rodgers. I guess you're still looking at Tom. I can't believe Tom Brady's still back, but Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and after that, those 4, I think that you get some really good quarterbacks, but I don't know if you would call them like the elite of the elite.
I think what Jeff is asking is a really good point, though. Can the elite quarterbacks, like Josh Allen? Okay, he was terrible year 1 with accuracy, right?
Right.
he elevated the team because he started to become special in year 2 and elite in year 3.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened, look at how good, look at the maturation process of the team. They became an elite team along with him. So you know, it's always subjective. You're trying to look at it with clear eyes. Is he the reason? Is it Sean McDermott? Is it assistant coaches? Is it all the above? Probably all the above.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, great quarterback play as we saw in 2017, even for a short time with Foles and for a longer time with Wentz in that season. You can do that. But non-elite play, like, for instance, Kirk Cousins, you've seen the best of Kirk Cousins. He'll always be just above average. He's not going to get any better. That's the way the league sees him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think now it is rare. Matthew Stafford, yes, he had great talent around him, but he was awesome last season. Now, Cooper Kupp, great. You also have, let's not forget, maybe the one of the best play designers and play callers in the National Football League. That does help. Coaching matters. That's the thing sometimes we forget doing the show.
Yeah.
And all of us forget. Like, coaching takes you to a next level. Brian Dable, I'm very interested to see how Josh Allen does with Ken Dorsey, who was his quarterback coach but never called plays before. Brian Dable coaches about as hard as anyone in the National Football League. So you got to look at that as well.
And as it pertains to Deshaun Watson, he is kind of going to a team where he's got he's got pretty good weapons. Remember, they traded for Amari Cooper. They have maybe the best running back in the league in Nick Chubb. They have a very good offensive line. You know, maybe that Watson is the guy that sort of unlocks the potential with David Njoku, who they brought back on the franchise tag. And we'll see. I mean, they could very easily draft a wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones was pretty decent. Anthony Schwartz they drafted last year to give him a little bit of speed. You know, they got our friend from Auburn there. So, you know, I think that, you know, hey, when you're starting with Nick Chubb, that offensive line, Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper, you got some pretty good weapons around you.
You do, yeah. I mean, they're a heavy 12 personnel team. I'm very interested to see if Stefanski, the play caller, the head coach, does he get out of his comfort zone? Because he did that to help Mayfield. Because, well, first of all, you have Chubb and you have Kareem Hunt. I get that, but you mentioned their offensive line, though. They have a couple issues. Right tackle Jack Conkling's come back from a major knee injury.
Right.
But overall, yeah, you know what their blueprint has been to run the football. Will they change it at all because they've got this dynamic passer? We'll have to see. But, you know, Anthony Schwartz is interesting. Talking to someone with the Browns lately, they want to make him an X receiver. I would have not believed that, but this is what they think. He's a track guy at Auburn. We'll see if it works out, but they've got enough to go there. But, you know, to get back to Jeff's question, it's a little bit subjective because there's no way to quantify. You just know by what the 75% of a grade is tape study. And I just remember Cosell saying that them being bad had nothing to do with Watson in 2020. It was the talent around him, and he wasn't the only one to say it. He was just brilliant in that season. You can't give a guy an MVP who's got a losing record. That's just not going to happen at 4-12. And, you know, the other thing is with the off the field accusations, you do wonder with the civil suits, you know, how does that weigh on him during the season? You don't. There's no way to evaluate that because he's never been in a place like that, where that and who knows what's coming from protests and all that coming. So you have to see. You know, the Browns obviously prepared for this. They know that this could be part of it, but there's a lot that Watson's got to get through there.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to seeing it. I suspect that Deshaun Watson will do well in Cleveland with what's around him. What you got next?
From Evan Mackin. Evan is from Ireland. Very cool. And Evan, are you from the States or are you just, you know, do you live over there? I'm curious. Big fan and avid listener from Ireland. Love the show. Thank you. First question. What do you think of trading for Preston Williams on the Dolphins? We actually talked about him briefly in a Thursday show, but we'll go a little bit more in depth because this is a good question, which they just brought him back. I'll look up his contract in a second. He's buried on their depth chart. Boy, you're right on that one.
Yeah.
Young, big body and big part of their pass game in 19 and 20. Yeah, he did have, I believe, I know it was a major knee injury. I believe it was an ACL a couple years ago. But main question, comparing the draft compensation being traded for receivers to that being traded for quarterbacks, particularly for the thirds for veteran quarterbacks, is the value of today's wide receiver creeping closer to the value of quarterback? Well, the top end, Evan, the top end receivers, yes. Like a first and second, but they have to be elite. The top 5 receivers, you saw what Stephon Diggs elicited in trade. You just mentioned Adams. You just mentioned Tyreek Hill. It's got to be the elite of the elite because I don't see a good, not great receiver getting a first-round yield. But Preston Williams is a guy that had some maturity issues. Remember, he was not drafted because of off-the-field issue. He is talented. You're right, Evan. He's got a big body. He does. Here's the thing, though. You can't settle. There was a great point on our message board. I think it might have been might have been on the YouTube one. I can't remember, but I like the way the guy phrased it. Let's leave Zach Pascal alone because they only look at him as a backup, which is the way the entire league looks at. I'm looking for high-end players. You got a high-end, really high-end player in Smith. Why not put a proven veteran? Not that Allen Robinson is a explosive guy, but he gives you what you want, a guy who will catch the football and get open repeatedly. It's Preston Williams, who's an undrafted free agent. Geoff, I mean, is he a guy you want? I mean, is this the kind of guy you think he could start?
Maybe. I mean, I think we had this. We had a conversation in the pod about DeVante Parker, who's a better wide receiver than Preston Williams, and even then we were saying yes, he makes you better, but is he moving the needle to the point where it's worth giving up what you have to get him, which shouldn't be that much? I mean, it would be smart to get DeVante Parker, I think, because you're probably not going to have to give up much, and he's, as you mentioned, doesn't have guaranteed money. So you can move on. You could still draft a guy. To me, you add Preston Williams to the mix. I don't know. It's sort of like the same reaction as adding Zach Pascal to be a slot receiver. It's like you have a guy there who can do some things for you, but is it enough? Is it what you're really looking for?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you still want to be able to draft a wide receiver who you think could give you a little bit more production and more explosion from that spot?
I would say this in trading for a guy like Preston Williams. First of all, he's on a 1-year deal. He's only making $1.5 million. He's definitely a backup. No team sees him as a starter. As you said very well, if DeVante Parker's a guy, I also think could be available because the top 3 spots in a depth chart are pretty much sewn up, and Parker's making too much money, and then Williams is not. He's more of a 3rd or 4th receiver. Again, he elevates. Yeah, does he run better? Is he a better football player than Pascal? Absolutely. But you're not solving the number 2 issue. They need, I mean, and quite frankly, you could call if they do something significant, trade for a really good young receiver. I think DeVante Smith 1A. He's very talented, very gifted, but I like a big bodied receiver, as you mentioned, who that's what I wanted out of this draft. Well, we'll get in more. You heard the Cosell pod that dropped earlier this week with receivers, and it's so deep. I'd rather draft one of those. If you or I making the call, I'd rather do that. But I like the Preston Williams thought. Very little money. Dolphins are responsible for a signing bonus of $100,000. The only money you owe him is his base salary is $965, $175 fully guaranteed at signing. He's a per game roster bonus. The contract's very cheap. The only thing you would do with Preston Williams is you upgrade your backups, which is fine. That's part of it, but you still have not solved that guy as your other starting receiver.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right. What else do we have? Let's see here. All right. From Ben Cohen. Ben said, this was in the Apple Podcast review, but you may have missed it or may phrased it poorly, so I'll try again. In your February 20th podcast, in the context of Cunningham Brown departures, you said Eagles front office does things differently from other teams. Yes, I think you did say that. I do remember you saying that, and I should have followed up like, well, I think I know what you mean, but I don't want to guess correctly, so we'll get into that. Okay. That statement interested me. Can you specifically say what you meant? We'll throw that back to Geoff. The Eagles front office structured in an unusual way? Yes. Do they make decisions in a different way? Yes. Can you offer some examples how it could hurt and help? Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I don't exactly remember when I said it or the context, but I'm assuming it was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but sort of real too. I mean, yeah, they do things differently. They have a different structure. Let's start with structure. I mean, I don't know that many teams. There might be a couple. I think the Chiefs have this, where you have co-directors of player personnel, Ian Cunningham and Brandon Brown, who both left this offseason, and maybe that's what I was speaking about. Both shared that title, which is, interesting to itself. The Eagles tend to have we've talked about how the Eagles at one point had a director of college scouting, an assistant director of college scouting, and a senior director of college scouting, which, as you have brought up many times, it's just all about title for paycheck. But it also does create an atmosphere where who's got more clout? The senior director because he's been there longer, or the director? Does the assistant have as much clout as I mean, there's a lot of ego to scouting. I think people understand that, and there's a lot of voices that need to be heard, and sometimes titles can help distinguish one voice to another from another, or at least the expectation of. So I think that was probably part of the differences. And then we've been through before just their whole process from 2019 and 2020, right? The 19 draft was the one where they got Dillard in the first round, I believe.
19,
And
yes.
and the 20 draft was obviously the Jalen Reagor, Jalen Hurts, Davion Taylor draft. And we've kind of been through the stories on that, on some of the things that happened, and whether it's scouts being blindsided by a pick or coaches getting more preference or priority in the draft than the scouts, or the GM trying to, make everybody happy instead of just going by the board, which they haven't always done. So that could have been any one of my references when I say they do it a little bit differently. But yeah, they haven't always had the cleanest process or the structure that makes maybe the most sense when you see the titles. I mean, they obviously know what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish, but yeah, it's not. If you go look and ask other NFL teams about their process, about their structure, you're going to get some differences there.
Yeah, it's not about their titles. It's actually what they wind up doing, and that's really been the story of the Eagles front office: is who does what, and what does the title even mean? Because the good thing is that they're really good. Here's the thing I know guys like about the Eagles: like they pay well, they're treated really well. It's just that for guys to move up, sometimes they have to get a slip in from another team, and then what happens is they bump the guy up because they don't. The good thing is, like as we've been saying, and the owner also said, they have all these GM candidates, which turned out to be true. Well, people laughed at it at the time, including myself. But look, they have a good front office. They really do. And as I'll continue to say, so if the GM follows what the board looks like it did in 2016, and he did last year, they're probably going to do well because the board is set so well and it's vetted pretty well. They've got a good process, but I know some people worried about the two guys who left before the draft, and there's certainly some concern there. It's fair to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Weil still runs the show for scouting, so in the end, it's going to be him setting the board, and the GM has to follow it, and they have to see their vision has to be the same. They can't just what happened in 20 cannot happen again. It just can't. We as you said, we may talk more about that like within 48 hours before the draft. We typically get an idea of kind of where they might go.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it this way. We could all debate how far away they are from winning, but the good thing is, when I say winning, being a really good playoff team, but I'll say this much: they have a really good front office, even with the guys who left.
Yes. Oh, one last thing on that, maybe part of the difference, or how we've talked about this, the sometimes uneasy arranged marriage between the analytics staff and the scouting and the coaching staff, and then the use of analytics in how they draft, which we've been told by other GMs, some use it differently than others, some don't use it at all. So we know they're heavily into using it, and so that's probably another area that I was referring to.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay, we've got a bunch on the honey badger. They've been asked different ways and how would he be used, and is there any interest in him? We know they've done their homework on him. I don't know. See, we were talking about this on Thursday's show. Tom Condon's his agent. You made a fair point about, hey, the longer this goes, the money's going to come down, and that's relatively true. But I don't know if Condon is, because honey badger had a good season. Now, we could debate whether he's the same player or not. Now he turns 30 in May, so he's 30 in NFL years. You have to make a decision because the Eagles have not been able to develop a young safety that they actually drafted. It just hasn't. I don't know how many years it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time. So I do worry about that. But look, Marcus Epps has been a good find for them. They didn't draft him. I got to believe he has a very good chance to start this season. But here's the problem: if you bring the Honey Badger in and you've got Anthony Harris, why are the Eagles going they're going the older safety route again? At some point, you got to start developing these players.
Hey, that's a great novel concept. The idea of
I
drafting and
know.
developing a young safety. I mean, you would think that they would have done that once in the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years.
Can you think of anyone? Okay, so Wallace to this point has not worked out at all. Is there?
Yeah.
Who has worked out at safety that they've actually drafted? Okay, I mean, anyone?
Do you want to play the Jeopardy music there? I mean, Brian Dawkins, Quentin,
No, I'm talking like
Brian
last 10 years.
Dawkins,
No,
and
but
Michael
I'm
Lewis.
talking last 10 years, like last 10 years.
I know. That's why I said play the Jeopardy music, because you'll be looking for an answer.
Oh, you're killing me with this.
I mean, they drafted Jordan Poyer, but they didn't develop him. They cut him.
Right.
So I'm not going to count that. Kurt Coleman was what, an undrafted guy, or was he a
No,
sixth?
seventh. He was good.
He was a seventh. You know what? He stuck around for a little bit. I wouldn't call him like dynamic or anything like that, but he was serviceable.
Fans were killing him. They were killing him.
Well, he played. They put him in a bad spot. They put him as a box safety behind a wide 9 front, where the safety has to come in and plug those run gaps. And he wasn't a big guy. He was a hitter, because Ohio State guy, but he wasn't big. He couldn't take the wear and tear of having to come in and make all those tackles in the box all the time. That just wasn't his game.
So the safeties Jacoby Stevens was the safety who's moved to linebacker, so he doesn't count. Wallace, as we talked about, hasn't really done anything for first 2 years. Jalen Mills was drafted as a corner. Now he's a hybrid player for the Patriots. But that wasn't drafted as a safety. God, they drafted a lot of corners. Oh, Eric Rowe. This Schwartz, as it was explained to us, did not want any parts of Eric Rowe. He didn't think he fit his scheme. This is where the front office is to say, no, we spent it. I get it that the GM he didn't have his role then, he was reassigned. But look, you gotta look down the road. Could this guy convert to another position? This is a bad miss by them. I don't care if Chip Kelly drafted him. So
yeah,
when they took over this group in 2016, you got to see what he is. I mean, he's been a good story. He's still there. Jalen Watkins, who's a sort of a journeyman / corner hybrid. Ed Reynolds didn't work out. Tall safety never worked out from Stanford. Earl Wolf, unfortunately, looked like he had a chance. You might remember him.
No, I remember him. Had a bad knee injury then.
Yep, exactly. Too many injuries, unfortunately. I'll say this: they haven't really drafted a lot of safeties. Curtis Marsh was a corner, right?
He was a corner.
And then here's the one that
allegedly.
Missed. Yeah, allegedly, right? Here's the one that missed. Oh, Jaquan Jarrett.
Yeah, Jaquan Jarrett.
Can't draft a box safety in the second round. It just cannot be done.
Yep.
Nate Allen was good until he blew out his patella. That he was not the same after it. That was not a bad draft pick. It just he got hurt. Well, here's your answer. They haven't really. I know you want them to address it. You're absolutely right, but they have not really addressed it like they should have.
That's been more of my issue than that they haven't used a higher pick on a safety, more so than that they missed on. Sometimes you're going to miss on some guys. I get that, but I mean, they don't give themselves a chance to hit when they don't use a high pick on one.
Yeah, and then a corner also before we get out of here. Jalen Mills obviously was a tremendous 7th round pick, but I'm looking at McPherson. Obviously, the jury's out. We don't know much about him yet. I'm just looking at DeVante Maddox is he's a good slot. Sidney Jones didn't work out. Rasul Douglas had his moments. He's his own corner only. It didn't work here. The Eagles made the right choice to buy it because of the way they wanted to play defense. And he clearly did not he just didn't earn a role here. Oh, Nate Gary, by the way, was moved to from safety, which he was in college, to linebacker. Blake Count that 16 draft. He was the only one who didn't work out. They kept bringing him back, but he was a returner. We mentioned Eric Rowe. Ja'Cory Shepard didn't work. Orlando Evans didn't work. These are late round picks.
You wait until the 3rd to the 7th round to draft your safeties.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Most of them are day 3 guys, and you're going to get what you pay for.
Oh, Brandon Boykin, who flashed and then lost.
He was a corner. Yeah, he was a corner.
Yeah,
slot corner.
So what would you like them to do? What should they do at corner and safety?
Draft them. Draft one. I'm not the GM. I'm not going to tell them who to draft, but put some resources into it.
Mm-hmm.
I would also, going back to the Tyrann Mathieu, if the number has come down, and we don't know that. We know his agent is Tom Condon, so that means that it's hard to get the number down.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ask Sam Bradford and every team that's ever had to sign him.
Joe Banner said, like, he just takes a number and he doesn't move.
Yeah,
And
well, it's worked for him.
Yeah, exactly. Condon's got the leverage because he's got the best players.
Right.
Usually a quarterback.
Right.
You know, we'll ask Joe the next time he's on with us. We got to get one before the draft. His top 3 toughest negotiators as agents.
Mm-hmm.
And because Joe, like, you know, they all love to get leverage, like get the upper hand. What it's like to deal with those guys. You try different strategy in negotiation. I'd love to hear about that. And we'll get Rick Spielman, definitely. We talked to Rick last week. He's definitely eager to do some stuff with us. So we'll figure it out with Rick, who interviewed for the Steelers GM job last week.
Yeah. So so with Mathieu, if the valuation meets the evaluation, meaning whatever number he's asking for, if he deserves it because his play says he's that kind of safety still, then I think the Eagles would be negligent almost not to make the move. What do you do with Harris? Well, you know, Harris is still your number 2 safety, and you just play Marcus Epps in a lot of big nickel, big dime packages. Right. And if Epps is playing really well and Harris isn't, that's why it's a 1-year deal. You know, Eric Wilson signed a 1-year deal. He got released halfway through the year. So if you need to either demote Anthony to your number 3 safety, or if you find that in the middle of the year he's just not what you're doing as a defense, then you can move on.
Let me ask a question on Mathieu. Have you heard anything about his tape last year?
Yeah. A couple of teams I spoke to questioned whether he can run the same way that he did earlier in his career. Not that he's old; he's not even 30 yet, but he will be 30 during the season. But
in May,
yeah. So doesn't run the same. But again, Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger, that we kind of think of as a guy who plays the post, plays the box, slides over to the slot. You know, plays nickel and can cover tight ends man to man. If he can't run the way he used to, okay, well, you have Avonte Maddox to play the slot. Like, you know, if you want to just use this guy as a safety, more of a what I would call a mix and match safety, a guy who can, you know, start off at the line of scrimmage, run back to the post, you know, help you with your disguise and deception, because he is still movable and he is smart and he has good instincts. That stuff, I don't think he's lost. I haven't heard that. He does fit with what Jonathan Gannon likes to do on the back end. So again, if the valuation meets the evaluation, to me, it's a no-brainer, but you know, it's not my franchise.
Well, you know how they value safety. They don't.
Exactly.
For whatever reason, they just have not spent the resources. And the thing is, look, I can understand that 10 years ago. The game has changed now. You need coverage players on the back end. You need range. You need playmakers.
But they valued him in free agency. I mean, that's usually where they get their safety.
But you know, Rodney was in it, you know, before all the injuries, solid player.
Right.
Wouldn't call him a playmaker.
Right.
How about a playmaking safety? You know, how about ball hawk? You know,
he doesn't fit the profile of what I mean, if he was a younger guy going into his second contract, like Marcus Williams, who the Eagles were very competitive for, they're there. But they're what I'm assuming is they're thinking about the age plus the number plus the, you know, the position that he plays and how much they want to dedicate to that when they still have other guys that they're probably looking at. They have 3 first-round picks. That's more money than you're normally used to paying for your draft picks, you know, if they keep 3 first-round picks. So there's a lot to consider there. I get it.
Yeah, Mark. Just before we get out here, Marcus Williams, you know, the 5-year deal with $14 million a year. It's basically a 3-year structure because $5 million of his $12 million base salary in 24 becomes fully guaranteed in 23, which is called an advance guarantee. Mm-hmm. The Eagles, as I understand it, were going to do that. They were whatever he was looking for. They were right there. I don't know what the exact differences were, but what our understanding was the structure is very close to what he got in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So they're admitting by going after Williams that maybe you'll finally get what you want. I know it's got to happen first, but the fact that they're willing to spend $14 million a year tells you that they want to upgrade the safety. So we got to look at that safety position for our draft coverage. We will have that for you because they've now shown they gave me answers to the test. They tried on Calvin Ridley. You're trying Allen Robinson, so they're telling you that they don't think Quez Watkins is a number 2 no matter what the head coach says. Because the answers are there. We don't have to make it up. They're there for you. I think Watkins would be a great rotational deep threat, a good, really good backup receiver who could rotate in. But asking him to be a starting receiver, I think that's a lot.
I agree. All right. So that's going to do it. We did have one question from our Apple reviews. It was a 5-star review from the name is Wool Unpulled. And it's a question about where Andre Dillard would rank among the left tackles who are now coming out in this year's draft. So I'm going to make the promise to Wool Unpulled that we will answer that when we get a little bit more intel on these left tackles, and then try to kind of relate that to what we knew about Andre Dillard coming out. Because Andre Dillard did come out in a weaker left tackle class. It was him, it was Titus Howard, and I think there was one other. Dillard was the first left tackle off the board, right? Or maybe he was the second.
I think he was the first.
Yeah, I thought he was the first too. It was, and that's very rare that your first left tackle doesn't go until the late teens.
Right.
So,
and that's why the Texans took Howard, because they wanted him. They wanted Dillard, so they took Howard.
Right.
Who's playing some guard. He's left tackle, good player. They did a big extension with him. We'll see if he continues to be a starter there. But the Dillard, I still think they'll wind up getting a 3 by the time the draft gets done if they want to move him. I know that they love having the depth, which I get. You're rare in today's NFL to have so much depth on the offensive line. It's actually a very good thing. You love to have that, particularly because of the injury rate on the offensive line. But remember now, his 5th-year option's due in by May 2nd. Obviously not going to pick it up because he's not going to start. So
right.
Why would you wait? I mean, if you get something you think is of value, move him, because you're not going to bring him back.
That's right. I forgot he went 22nd. For some reason, I thought he went higher than that, but no. That is very rare that the first offensive tackle in a draft goes all the way into the 20s. So that just goes to show you the strength of that draft was not great. Is Jawan Taylor still with Jacksonville? He went in the 2nd round.
Yes, with the right tackle. Yeah. In fact, I want to take a deeper look at Dillard's contract as we get closer.
Greg Little went in the 2nd round. Cody Ford. What's that?
Yeah, Greg Little was overdrafted. He was drafted height, weight, speed, kind of measurables. And he's still with the Dolphins, but he'll never play for them.
Right.
He's like a 3rd-string tackle.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, Cody Ford out of Oklahoma has played tackle and guard. He's their top backup lineman.
I remember him,
2nd rounder.
Yeah. 2nd round was 38 overall. And then Dalton Risner, who is playing for the Broncos. He's a pretty decent player.
Yep.
Yeah. But and then Max Sharping late in the 2nd round there. So it was not a very good OT draft, to be honest with you. So we'll get more intel and make that comparison for our next Ask ITB. So that will do it. I hope we answered those questions to the best of our abilities. We will do another Ask ITB in the near future. For Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Birds TV, an Ask ITB edition.